Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. This week's video is another Life is Strange character deep dive. We're going to be going over one of the more controversial characters within the Life is Strange games, and that is Victoria Chase. She serves as an antagonist in both Life is Strange 1 and Before the Storm, but a lot of people know her as being the Queen Bee of Blackwell and a very close friend of Nathan Prescott. So in this video, we'll be going over her early life, her time at Blackwell, and what she may be up to after the events of the games. So without further ado, let's get into it. Victoria Marybeth Chase was born on two conflicting dates. I know it didn't take long for us to get into the long-standing issue with Life is Strange. Usually these discrepancies are due to the change in developers from Life is Strange 1 to Before the Storm, but in this case it's just a bit of oversight. If you go by her student record, Victoria was born August 14th, 1995, or if you go off of her social media, she was born on November 14th, 1995. The name Victoria Chase was chosen by the writers as a reference to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. More specifically, a nod to the character Cordelia Chase. There's a car in the Blackwell parking lot that has the license plate number BFF-VMP-RSLR that's meant to sound sort of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so it's very possible that that is Victoria's car. As I mentioned with the birthday contradictions, as of the time of the first Life is Strange game, depending on which birth date you go with, she could either be 18 or 17 during the events. It appears that the August birthday listed on her official documents is most likely the accurate one. That being because not only in-universe is it an official document, but also during episode 5, if you properly warn her about Mark Jefferson, she'll say, "I don't want to die like this, I'm only 18. And it seems like the developers confirmed this as well, as in Before the Storm, her birthday is listed as being in August. While we don't get her parents' full names, we do know that they own a very established art gallery in Seattle, known as the Chase Space. Not much is known about her time with her parents in Seattle before she came to Arcadia Bay for Blackwell Academy. But we can probably gather that her love of art most likely stemmed from her parents' interest in it, and their art gallery. It's probably where she learned many of her favorite artists and the ones that she references in her own work. Contradictions in the lore is going to be the theme for this character deep dive, at least until we get into the actual game portions itself. This contradiction actually comes down to a larger issue with Blackwell Academy as a whole that I've discussed in a couple of my previous lore videos. That being that the school is described as like a special art program for seniors, kind of like a governor's school. However, with the introduction of Before the Storm, it found itself looking a lot more like a regular high school, having multiple grade levels and allowing younger students to enroll, and it just seemed to be more of an art-focused school. I've heard of schools where you apply for a certain art concentration and then they allow you to focus on that while you also attend a normal high school education. So it seems like they kind of walked back what they were doing with it. The reason that's important is because in Life is Strange 1, Victoria says that the reason she came to Blackwell Academy was because of Mark Jefferson. She saw his work and was just so enamored by it that she had to know more about him. When she learned that he was going to start teaching at Blackwell Academy, she applied right away. This totally tracks with the first game and the way that Blackwell Academy works. She applied for the senior program after hearing that Mark Jefferson was working at Blackwell, and that was that. Cut and dry. However, we see that Victoria is attending Blackwell Academy in Before the Storm, which is set before Mark Jefferson becomes a teacher at Blackwell. This could be viewed as an oversight by the developers and by the writers. However, I think it speaks a little more to her character. We know that Victoria is insecure. She's insecure about her own work, her own ability to succeed, and that's what leads her to eventually attempting to come on to Mr. Jefferson during the events of Life is Strange 1. I think that her claim that she came to Blackwell because of Mark Jefferson is an extension of that. Sort of another way to try to get close to an artist that she genuinely does idolize by making up this story about her coming to the school just for him. So either way, no matter what the motivation itself was, Victoria ends up attending Blackwell Academy and staying in dorm 221. This brings us to the Before the Storm era. Despite what you may think about Victoria and her wealth, she didn't exactly take off right away at Blackwell Academy. She wasn't exactly the top dog queen bee that you would see in the later Life is Strange game. The other interesting thing is Victoria's opinions on drugs. That might sound strange, but in Before the Storm, she's actually very averse to them. She talks about drugs by saying that they are effed up shit, and that she basically didn't really want anything to do with it. However, that all changed when she saw the opportunity that was the Vortex Club. I've made a very long video about the Vortex Club and its formation, as well as how Victoria changed it from the inside. I highly recommend you check that because I go into the details and the theories about how it formed, its origins, things like that, a lot more over in that one. Honestly, it's a video that I may even remake with better sound in the future. Let me know in the comments if there's any videos like that one or others that you'd like me to remake with some better sound. I know a year ago my setup wasn't very good, but I've definitely improved it a little bit. I know some people haven't complained about the sound outright, but I know it bothers me. So if there's any like that you want me to go back and remake and maybe add some more information if I can, please let me know in the comments. But for the sake of this video, I'll kind of briefly go over it and more specifically Victoria's involvement in it. However, she is just so deeply tied to it that if you want the full story, I would highly recommend checking out that video. The Vortex Club started as an anti-bullying organization. It was something that was still an anti-bullying organization by the time that Victoria Chase came to Blackwell Academy. But she saw something more in it. She saw an opportunity. Combined with this opportunity she saw with the Vortex Club was also her meeting Nathan Prescott. Nathan Prescott's another character I've covered with a deep dive kind of video, but to briefly explain, he was also not exactly the most popular at the time of Before the Storm. He was really bullied, he was very low on the social ladder, and nobody really wanted to hang out with him. Well, him and Victoria managed to become friends, and it seems that with her leadership and his money, they were able to work together to mold the Vortex Club into what we end up seeing in Life is Strange 1, taking it from being an anti-bullying organization into an elitist party club for Blackwell students. The reason I really believe they worked together on this is because they clearly have each other's back. For example, in Before the Storm, if Chloe messes with her homework, Victoria has a chance of getting suspended. However, Nathan is able to step in and stop that from happening. And Victoria will stand up to Chloe and text her if she bullies Nathan. So clearly they are friends slightly before the Vortex Club turns into what it is in its modern sense. So it makes more than enough sense, in my view, that they would have worked together on this. We can also probably believe that Nathan is the one to introduce drugs to Victoria. As we see later on, she's picked up smoking, she's at all these parties with alcohol and drugs. A very big difference from someone who said drugs are effed up shit. The other thing that I really think allows the Vortex Club and Victoria herself to rise in the social ladder is the disappearance of Rachel Amber. During the time of Before the Storm, Rachel knew Victoria, and the two of them were seen together at parties and were clearly commenting on each other's social medias, things like that. And at the time, Rachel was still the top queen of the school, I guess you could say. And she was the one that Victoria was constantly jealous of. But I think Rachel meeting Chloe in Before the Storm really aided Victoria's rise up the social ladder. Rachel would begin to spend more and more time with Chloe, who would end up being expelled from Blackwell Academy, obviously isn't spending her days in class, and it sounds like Rachel herself was having those same sort of delinquent streaks, to spend time with Chloe, to do drugs, things like that. Either way, This thing pulling her away from Blackwell Academy is what really opened the door for Victoria and Nathan's changes for the Vortex Club. It really allowed Victoria to take control of her image because she no longer really had to compete with Rachel. This leads us to Life is Strange 1, where Victoria is a prominent member of Blackwell Academy. She's widely considered the top dog, and her Vortex Club has reached its full potential. It has expanded into what her vision for it was. And of course, rising tides carry all ships, so Nathan is now very, very socially elite compared to how he was in Before the Storm. According to Victoria's Blackwell Academy student record, she's considered the gold standard for a student and has a consistently high GPA of 3.9. And it seems like all of this success has gotten to her head. She's got her little groupies of Taylor and Courtney, and it treats them horribly. And then on top of that, she's having her sexting affair with Zachary Riggins. So clearly it's all getting to her. And with that kind of power, even on a smaller scale as high school, it leads to people doing really, really bad things because they think that they're untouchable. This portion of the video is going to get a little dark. We're going to discuss one of the more unforgivable things that Victoria has done, something that really complicates her character and plays a major role in the story of the games. On October 4th, 2013, the Vortex Club hosted a party. Kate Marsh, a shy, very religious student, decided to attend. During the party, Nathan Prescott spiked her drink. Shortly after consuming only one glass of wine, Kate started to feel dizzy and would eventually fully black out. Once blacked out, Kate was out of her mind, unable to consent or really make any of her own logical decisions. She was making out with several strangers, doing things that were completely out of character for her. And the whole time, Victoria Chase was recording her. After a while, Nathan told Kate that she was going to go to a hospital, when in reality, she was taken to the dark room and photographed by Mark Jefferson. The next morning, Kate would wake up in her dorm, not remembering anything, but in her words, just feeling gross. She would then find out that Victoria posted the video of her out of her mind online for everyone to see. This caused major stress between Kate and her extremely religious family and sent her into a depression, and depending on your actions within the video game, could even lead to her suicide. And for reference, it's not like Victoria has a small following on social media. For this smaller school, she has 857 friends as well as 1,126 subscribers on her social media page. And in 2013, at a small school like this, that's a lot. Not only would she post it, she would also write the link down in several locations. The final thing that makes this whole situation that much worse is a fringe theory I covered back in one of my first videos that I ever made. A fringe theory that actually gained the attention of some other YouTubers who mentioned it in their retrospective of Life is Strange, and I'll put that right here and link it below. I really appreciate that. But in this theory, I posited that Mark Jefferson must have had a third accomplice. Between the cell phone pinging in so many different locations and the timing not making sense, as well as the fact that Kate ends up back in her dorm at the end of the night. However, it would look very strange for either two grown men or one male student to drag an unconscious girl into the girls' dormitory. Especially since the Vortex Club is known by the school. They would be aware of these parties and that, hey, we should keep an eye out for these students. They're going to be coming back to their dorms drunk or whatever. I'm sure they have some sort of policy related to it. The point is, it would stick out like a sore thumb. So in that theory, I had the idea that he was being assisted by a third accomplice who was a woman. In that theory, I suggested it could be Stella. My reasoning was that at the end of the world party, Warren is completely wasted, but he claims that he's only had one beer, just like how Kate claimed to only have one glass of wine. We also see that in the alternate timeline where Chloe is paralyzed, Stella is with Warren. She also buys drugs from Frank. All of those things combined had me thinking that Stella was attempting to drug Warren and was somehow involved with Mark Jefferson. However, for this video, I'm not saying that Victoria Chase is this secret third accomplice. She obviously had no idea what Mark Jefferson and Nathan were up to. But it's very possible that she unknowingly helped them. It's very possible that she was the one who took Kate back to her dorm after Mark Jefferson was done with her in the dark room. And so whether she knew it or not, she was helping in their crimes. That one is just a theory, but I think for the sake of this video, it does track. Even if Victoria didn't know that Kate was being drugged at the time, she still thought it was okay to record an insanely intoxicated teenager. And nobody in these parties should be drinking to begin with. Nobody is 21. I don't mean to be like a tattletale, but like, come on, guys. So all of that, combined with the fact that she proceeds to blackmail her with it and bully her with it. I mean, one of the first scenes we see of Victoria is her throwing a balled up paper at Kate, which has a rude message on it to make fun of her about this whole situation. And we know that Victoria is not just spreading the video, but that she's the one recording it, because we see it in a photo. Victoria would go on to take down the video after Kate attempted or succeeded in her suicide. However, I still can't give her credit, because during the sequence when Max pauses time in order to try and save Kate, who's out there recording once again? Victoria. You can see it plain as day, and you can actually confront her about it at the Vortex Club party, where Victoria claims that she deleted it after everything happened. Finally, to wrap it up, depending on the outcome of the scene with Kate, she will either leave a comment on her social media page saying something along the lines of, "Sending love to you, Kate." If Kate passes, she will comment on social media things like "requisite in pace." She will also, in that timeline, go on to blame Max for her death by saying that, "I hope you at least got a selfie out of it," which, holy wow. I didn't get this upset when I was talking about Nathan and he's like a horrible criminal. She's just mean. At least with Nathan, you can be like, oh, he was so mentally like out of it. But no, she's just hating for the love of the game. In both timelines, she will write on Victoria's dorm, like the little whiteboard slate, "Wherever you go, there I am," which that has a dark meaning either way, because who was at both of these extremely traumatic events for Kate? Victoria. So this whole thing is just rough. It shows you how vindictive Victoria is at her core. And I know we get a little redemption thing or explanation with her about her insecurities, and that's why she does all these things, and that's why she attempts to come on to Mark Jefferson at some point. And I get it, that she's like jealous of other people and insecure, but like, dear God, there comes a point when you just gotta say, you're a jerk. That's an understatement. It makes it really hard for me, especially when you lay it all out like this and you talk about it in the detail that you do, for me to even like remotely empathize or like Victoria beyond that. I'm sure Kate, with her extreme faith that she would find a way to forgive Victoria, I don't doubt it. I just know, yeah, when you lay it out all like that, and I think it's one of those things, there is a term in film, I'll put it right here, where you can show the same image, but your opinion of it will change depending on the image that precedes it. So if I had a guy who had a neutral face and you showed a dog peeing on the ground, you would cut to the other guy and I would say, oh, well, he's upset because the dog's peeing on the ground. But if I then showed you something like a beautiful landscape and then cut to his neutral expression, I would say, oh, well, he's taking in the beautiful landscape and all this and that. And I think that is the same problem I'm having with Victoria and what she does post Kate's attempt / successful attempt, because depending on what happens, you could gather that maybe in one she's genuine and one she's not. I would like to believe that she does turn over a new leaf and does sort of take this tragedy or near tragedy to heart as a thing of, hey, wow, I need to change because I contributed to all of that. In the alternate timeline where Chloe is paralyzed, we see Victoria and Max actually being very close. And I'm kind of putting it right here because they take place around, in the separate timelines, they like happen at the same time, so I'm putting it here. They seem to be pretty close, and if anything, Victoria kind of listens more to Max than the other way around. Like, it doesn't seem like Victoria treats Max as one of her groupies like Courtney or Taylor, but more as an equal or even someone who's a bit above her. Victoria's fate is something that people have pointed to for a few different reasons. One is that it kind of seems like it contradicts itself at times. Like, she is shown to be dead, like they explicitly say, hey, she has been murdered. But then she's alive, and it doesn't make much sense. Obviously, she survives in the timeline where the town is not sacrificed. But we did get confirmation in Life is Strange 2 that she is alive and well because she sends a letter to David Mattson and talks about being in the bunker and all these things. It is a mess because, so in the base game, if you're just looking at Life is Strange 1, what happens is if you warn Victoria about Nathan, she will go to Jefferson as basically a comfort, be like, hey, I don't know what's going on, and he will lead her to his bunker. And then he tells Max at some point that he has murdered Victoria. That is during the sequence where you're like jumping into the photos and doing all this crazy stuff. It's just that at some point Victoria is no longer next to you and she has been presumably murdered. Now, the idea, this was a fan theory proposed back just in Life is Strange 1, is that, oh, she could have survived this ending, the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay ending, because when Max uses Warren's photo to jump back in time and stop Chloe from being shot, she inadvertently changes this because she never goes into the party, so she's not able to warn Victoria, so then Victoria never goes to Jefferson, so then Victoria never gets thrown into the bunker and is murdered. That sounds a little complicated, but you could see how the developers might want to use that as an excuse to keep her around. Makes total sense to me. The timeline's changed, and sure, yes, you can say that, well, maybe it was just a splinter off and whatever, but I think that's a fairly clear way to kind of lay that all out, of how she's alive in Life is Strange 2 if you were to sacrifice Arcadia Bay. However, in the letter that she sends to David, she says something along the lines of, I actually owe my life to Mark Jefferson for throwing me in that bunker. Basically saying that the reason she survived is because Jefferson threw her in the bunker, and then when the storm happened, she was only able to survive it because she was in the bunker and it protected her. But that doesn't make sense because we don't see her being taken away, but we see that she's no longer around, and Jefferson gives us verbal confirmation she has been killed. And when David comes bursting through the door and kills Jefferson, or at least subdues him, we don't see any Victoria. So I don't know how they kind of missed this. I feel like you had the perfect scapegoat with that first idea that, well, Max never went in, so thus she never went to the bunker. I don't know. So all of that to say, she survives no matter what, really, in the end. She explains in the letter to Mark Jefferson, as well as I believe in some of the double exposure posts, how she's in Seattle, living life with her family again, that kind of thing. So that's what she's up to currently. And that leads us to the different relationships of Victoria Chase. First up is Taylor Christensen and Courtney Weaver. The interesting thing is that of the two, it seems like Taylor actually has something closer to a real friendship with Victoria. Victoria actually goes to her for comfort after Kate's attempt, and the two actually seem to be a little closer, even with Taylor encouraging Victoria and calling her an evil biatch. So they, of course, Taylor still sort of looks up to Victoria, but it seems that out of the two, Victoria values her a little more. The other reasons it's a little more clear that Courtney is the lesser of the two is when you look at the Vortex Club party, Taylor and Victoria are hanging out inside of the VIP section, but it's said that Courtney is the one basically outside of the VIP section. She's the one at the table, so she's not even really in the party. This could be seen as a way to work her way up into those higher social standings by sort of proving herself to Victoria, I guess you could say. The other big friend of hers is Nathan Prescott. Now, I have dove into their relationship, whether it's in the Vortex video, whether it's in the Nathan Prescott video. I've talked about them a lot, so I'll keep it a little more brief. But to be clear, they do not have a romantic relationship. They are like brothers and sisters. As screwed up as their whole relationship is, it really seems like they bonded over them both sort of being lower on the social ladder. And by using Nathan's money, Victoria was able to use her social ability to turn both of their lives within the school around and create the Vortex Club. And this is what created that special bond between the two of them. And it does seem like they both genuinely care for each other. They genuinely care for each other enough that Nathan has opened up about some of his mental health issues to Victoria. Also, some of his issues with his family members. So I don't think Mr. Hotshot trying to beat up everybody if they even look at him the wrong way would be willing to tell someone about his daddy issues and his drug issues, his mental health issues, if he didn't truly trust and care about them. And she clearly can tell when he's kind of flying off the handle as well. She even admits that sometimes recently he's been freaking her out as of the first game. Things like that, but I think they have a very mutual relationship in that she kind of helps him with the social aspect. And not that she comes from nothing or anything, but his money is far beyond even the normal rich person, I feel like, and that's why they work so well as a team. Finally, her friend, and I guess the first of her enemies, would be Max Caulfield. With Max, it's complicated. She's jealous of her talent and jealous of her kind of non-caring attitude, I guess you could say. And depending on your actions as Max, you could become friends with her and sort of get under the surface. So it really just depends on your player choice, how you want that to all kind of pan out. When it comes to other members of the Vortex Club, it's a little more complicated. I would consider them friends, but I don't think anyone beyond Taylor, Courtney, or Nathan are actually friends of hers, if you get what I'm saying. When it comes to enemies, or at least people she dislikes, obviously the top of the list is Rachel Amber. Because she was really kind of a free spirit. People loved Rachel because she wasn't artificial. I mean, sure, she was and she had her problems, but to everyone, she was everything. I know that sounds ridiculous, but people knew her in so many different ways and knew her for so many different reasons that it just allowed her to be a chameleon and be friends with everyone. She could go to these punk rock concerts. She could go to a theater club. It didn't matter. She could blend in and make friends with everyone. And that's what Victoria really hated about her, and she wanted that kind of power and that kind of influence over the school. The other thing is she actually takes the time to vandalize the missing persons posters of Rachel, which that's just another jerk move right there. Next on that list is going to be Kate Marsh. With Kate, I wouldn't even say an enemy. I would just say Kate is a victim of Victoria's bullying and Victoria's view on people and how social structures should work. She views Kate as being lesser than her because of her holier-than-thou views, I guess you could say, with her being so devoutly religious. But she does, like I said, she expresses some remorse for it and things like that. It's just, it's such a difficult thing to characterize because she does express remorse and like kids can be cruel, that whole saying and stuff. But like, dear God, it wasn't even an enemy situation. I know that's like on all the Wikipedia pages they listed as like friends, enemies, lovers, whatever. No, she's just straight up bullied her, man. So, yeah. Next up is Chloe Price. That one is kind of determinant. You could say that her reason for disliking Chloe in Life is Strange 1 is purely because of her association with Rachel. However, if you want to sort of look at the series as a whole, you could say it's more so because of her interactions with Chloe earlier on, like in Before the Storm, whether you sabotage her homework or help Rachel sort of sabotage Victoria so she can get the part in the play, things like that. You can see how she would very naturally kind of dislike Chloe, especially if you don't help out Nathan, if you bully Nathan or anything like that. This last one's pretty interesting because it leads right into our next one, is Juliet Watson. Juliet decided to write an article about Victoria and her bullying and all these issues around Blackwell that are mostly caused through the Vortex Club. And this is something that Victoria would take very personally, and it was most likely her ultimate motivation for her affair with Zachary, who is Juliet's boyfriend. And then finally, this one is interesting. It's listed in all the online stuff. It's listed in the romantic section, but it's kind of odd. And Mark Jefferson, her relationship with Mark Jefferson is so interesting because if we account for the fact that she was lying to make it sound like I came to this school for him, I did all these things, I love him, all this and that. She most definitely appreciates his work, genuinely appreciates his artwork and things like that. I don't think that's in doubt. But I think her romantic feelings are. I think her decision to attempt to pursue him, as well as her attitude of sucking up to him in order to get her artwork out there through him, I think it ultimately comes from her underlying insecurity about herself, her looks, her artwork ability, things like that. And that is what ultimately leads her to doing what she does. I don't think it's a genuine romantic interest in him. That is just my opinion on the character and how I think she's written. So all in all, that relationship's very odd. It's more of an opportunistic relationship. She sort of thinks that Jefferson is going to be like, every other guy that you can make fall for you and get things out of him. Sort of how she's been taught to do things, to manipulate people, I guess you could say. But yeah, so that brings me to the end of the video. And if you stuck around this long, I have a little channel update / news thing. So with the channel, I'm currently about to go on my last winter break for college. I'll be graduating soon. But the thing is, I won't be able to record while I'm on the road. It's for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be filming a bunch of videos after this one goes up on Sunday and just sort of edit them, keep them coming out week by week. I've got a plan. There is some winter themed stuff like The Long Dark. We're doing some stuff that I want to do, like the Jurassic Park 4 weird hybrid dinosaurs thing. We're going to talk about those dinosaurs and kind of discuss how that stuff wound up in the future Jurassic Park films. And then finally, there's going to be a couple of remakes of previous videos, like I mentioned, just because my sound and my lighting from last year to this year is significantly better in my dorm. And I want to put out, something better for you guys. And there's also new information I'd like to add, particularly with the Max Caulfield video, with Double Exposure being out, and we're almost coming up on a year now that I think about it. With that being out and all of that, I think it's time to update it because there's some information about her life and what she was doing post Life is Strange 2, how she ended up at Caledon, things like that. So we're going to get into that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or, whatever.